Hey there, beautiful souls. Welcome to InnerViews, the podcast where we dive deep into the realms of therapy, healing, and intentional living. I'm your guide on this adventure, Ivory. Are you ready to embark on a transformative journey with me? Whether you're navigating the complexities of trauma, embracing intentional parenting, or seeking self-help strategies, this podcast is your sanctuary. InnerViews is not just a podcast, it's a community, a safe space where stories unfold and healing takes center stage. Your story matters. And here, courageous storytelling is the heartbeat of our existence. We'll be exploring powerful themes like healing, navigating the intricacies of foster care, the strength found in survival, the beauty of reclamation, and the pure bliss of joy. So if you're ready to join hands with a community that understands, subscribe now. Let's walk this path together because the journey toward understanding and well-being starts right here, right now. Welcome to InnerViews, where every step is a celebration of your resilience and a testament to the incredible strength within you. Let's make this journey unforgettable. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Thank you for tuning into InnerViews. I really do appreciate you being here, and I'm super excited to have you join us for the second season. Y'all don't know the work that has been put into this podcast and this platform, but I do appreciate you showing up and listening and supporting us. So today I have the honor and the privilege of introducing you to our guest, Dave. Dave, can you please tell us a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, so my name is Sensei Dave Armstrong. I'm a life coach, motivational speaker, 24-year Air Force veteran, but I'm also a statistic. And so the statistic is I'm part of the 0.00 something percent of youth that come out of foster care and juvenile detention that actually more than just actually make it and then give back to the rest of us that are going through the same thing or working with youth that are going through foster care, juvenile detention, that are in the hood, that feel hopeless. And so I'm extremely privileged every day to wake up and think about how I can impact others and make their lives just a little bit better.
Thank you so much. And that's why I want you to be here today, because I want to try to have more diversity this season around. And I realized I didn't have a lot of people who identify as men last season. So I want to hear what y'all have to say. I don't want to assume that you identify as a man. Firstly, do you identify as a man?
I am 100% a man.
Thank you for clarifying that. What are your pronouns? Maya, she, her, hers. But yeah, so I realized I want the male perspective because, not all foster kids are women or identify as women. And we need to hear from those who had to endure experiencing the child welfare system from the gender perspective, because it is relevant and it does impact what you go through, not only while you're in it, but once you age out and you have to live the rest of your life, right? Because life doesn't stop once we age out of the system. It continues and it gets exponentially harder each year that we're further and further apart from that. So thank you for being here. I really, really do appreciate it. Let's hop into our questions, shall we? All right. So you emphasize the importance of hope and skill building and transforming outcomes for youth in foster care and juvenile detention. What restorative justice practices do you believe are most effective in addressing the systemic inequities that these youth face?
Mentorship, number one. And so we know the efficacy of it. We know that it's proven. We know that it works. And we also know that there's not enough of it. If we think that there's enough of it, then we need to just reevaluate the statistics that are absolutely dismal. The end. And so we know that having a positive female role model for females and a positive male role models for males is what's needed, period. And so, I see people debating these topics or want to try to fight against that. And it's unfortunate that there are people that don't believe that, but, it makes no sense to believe a woman can raise a man, nor does it make any sense to believe a man can raise a woman. And so we need more mentors, more healed adults, and more people with lived experience. And unfortunately, this is the problem that we have is we know how impactful, hugely impactful, those of us that have lived experience, that have released the trauma, that have overcome and that have succeeded in life, how small that number is. We know how absolutely, I mean, it's just horrific how small the number is. And the only way that we're going to see a difference is by getting more young adults that age out of the system healed and successful and thriving in life, and then feeling like they should give back and want to give back and want to become involved. And so then now all of a sudden we see both of the statistics decreasing or increasing depending on what stat you're looking at, right? You know, the more of us that have lived experience that are giving back to those that are going through will in turn help those that are going through want to give back. As my mentor did, as my CASA did. Ron Barnick was a pilot in the Air Force, and he inspired me to join the Air Force, serve 24 years, tour all around the world. And the only thing he did was show up and bring me over to his house and show me little trinkets from all around the world. And those little trinkets from where I live now in Greece, from Korea, from Italy, all those little things that he had in his house inspired me and made me think, wow, there's a world outside of this little bubble that I'm living in. How can I figure out how to see that?
That's really beautiful. It inspires so many thoughts in me. The first is that I feel like for so much of my childhood and youth, I didn't have clear mentors. And as an adult, I realized when you're deemed one of the quote unquote successful ones, right? Like people overlook a lot of things. And one of the biggest things that they overlook is your need for mentorship and your need for social capita in terms of your career progression and, advancing in life, right? And they think that if you're not on drugs, if you're not in a mental institution, if you're not popping out babies left and right, they think that you're fine and you're okay. But what they're not talking about is, okay, so for those of us who baseline don't necessarily have those adversities, we're trying to reach financial mobility and freedom. We're trying to build houses for stability. A lot of us are responsible for the younger people in our families, for our siblings, for our parents, And so I think that that's something that people overlook, and mentors can really fill in the gap for that. That also kind of put me along the mindset of the idea of heroes and how important they could be. And I
Mhm.
realized I didn't really have many heroes as a child or a young adult, teenager. This may sound silly, but Mr. Rogers was one of mine, kind of. I really,
That's
I
amazing.
did. But listen,
Awesome.
hear me out because his emotional intelligence was superior, was it not? Like it was,
Okay. Yep. I
his
feel you
emotional
100%.
intelligence was like
100%.
and
Yeah.
so for
Yeah.
me, I really valued emotional intelligence because I have parents who are mentally ill. I have a lot of people in my family who struggle with mental illness. And
Mm.
emotional intelligence is really one of those kind of resiliency factors for dealing with that and something that can help them in their struggles as well. So for me, that was like a pinnacle of like awesomeness. I
Yeah.
digress. But
I agree. No, I agree. You know, something that resonated with me that you talked about is success. And so, one, there is success exists, and so we don't want to air quotes success. And the truth is just the truth. And so, until you meet a millionaire, you go, well, that could never be me. I see people on TV doing that. Until you meet a movie star, a popular singer, until you meet someone that does play football, that is an entrepreneur, until you meet someone, you kind of think that's just something in the distance that, I don't know, that's not me. I don't think, I certainly wasn't smart enough to be in the position that I'm in now. CEO, nothing. Like that was not my, I was illiterate when I graduated high school, literally illiterate. And so there is success, but something that pisses me off is the definition or the line that people in this industry, and I'm going to call it an industry, define success as, because graduating high school is a statistic. And so 50% of us don't graduate high school, come emancipating or aging out of foster care. I'm sorry, graduating high school is not, there's nothing about that that says, oh, you've succeeded anything.
You don't have to tell me. I'm a former English teacher. Okay. I taught high school and I see what happens to get kids out the building. And
Yeah,
like,
oh yeah. I was pushed
God,
out of the building. But my kids who are 29 and 30 years old didn't have a choice of graduating high school or going to college. Like that was not my line for their success in life. Oh, they graduated. Good job. Okay, now they're part of the good part of the statistic. No, they're not. They're supposed to graduate. The end. So our litmus test for what we define success as for youth that are experiencing foster care or juvenile justice is dismal at best. Dismal, oh, don't recidivate. Of course, don't go back to juvenile detention or jail. But 85% do, and 70% or more, depending on what state, end up in prison. So let me say that clearly. 70 to 85% of youth that are justice involved, so in juvenile detention, one way or another, end up in prison. And then that statistic has been there for a decade at least. I'm sorry, I mean, how are we not yelling off the rooftops? How is there not so much more out there to offer our youth that are in detention? People like us that are doing this work, that have lived experience, we should have our doors knocked down daily by the people that are leading juvenile justice, that are leading foster care.
they don't want
Every day,
to.
someone should be knocking your door down, going, "Hey, please come. Oh, 10,000 here. No, I don't care what you charge. Please, can you come? Yes, please. Oh, you have a mentoring report? Please, let's implement it. Let's give it a try."
Absolutely. Absolutely. The interdisciplinary experts is what I call them. Like, not only do we have this lived experience, but we also have professional subsets that equally qualify us to be able to do this work and to be compensated. And I'm kind of beyond even just being compensated. Start writing us full positions that are salaried with benefits and
Yeah,
packages, and
yeah.
stop slapping us with little gift cards or like $500
Oh,
here and there. It's so
yeah.
disrespectful and it's a disservice. But you know what? I think the center of this whole conversation and how it could even come to be this way is that oppression is profitable. That's really what it's
It
about.
is. It is. I mean, if people were not making money off of it, it wouldn't exist. And we just know that. And it's unfortunate that people that are in positions of control, I don't want to say power, but control. And I don't think they're all bad. I don't. I think that they're unqualified? Yeah, but that's not their fault. They didn't have the lived experience that we did, and I'm glad for that. I don't wish anyone what we had to endure. Anyone. I mean,
Absolutely.
being hungry every night, homeless when I turned 18, living in a trailer in a field, refrigerators with padlocks on it. Nobody should have to endure that, and we did. And guess what? We survived. We thrived,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
we're using our past for other people's futures, and that's beautiful. But no one should be in a position with control over our youth in these environments that does not have lived experience. Period. Period.
Preach.
It doesn't exist. It's like hiring a CEO that's never been a CEO. And it's like, well, I'm sorry, I know you want to run Coca-Cola, but yeah, you've never done it. And I don't think that's going to be a good idea. Won't you run something smaller first, get some experience, and then come over? Well,
It's so complicated because there are so many of us who are qualified. And at the same time, there are also so many of us who show up and who are asked to show up who are very traumatized and they're actively working from a place of their trauma. And so a
yeah.
lot of people will think that, that represents the entirety of people with lived experience. And that is not true. That's not the case. That person is just particularly wounded right now. Okay.
Yeah.
And maybe instead of asking them to come trauma dump their stories and their experiences, maybe get someone else to do it and acknowledge that they need help that's not speaking and sharing their stories right now.
You
I think
agree.
that that's kind of the nuance of the conversation. Like, we need to stop getting people to speak on what they've been through if they're not totally healed from that experience.
I
And,
agree.
and
100%.
that is a trauma informed approach issue. That really is.
Yeah. Yeah. But, the antithesis or the other side of that is a lot of people do. I coach people to speak. So I'm a motivational speaker. I coach other people how to speak on stage, blah, blah, blah. And I've had people come to me that thought they were healed. And then they get on stage and they're crying. And I'm like, I'm in the back of the room going, oh my gosh, oh my gosh.
But see, that's different because they're controlled and they have you to guide them. I'm talking about when we go and pluck these people out of their group homes and say, hey, do you want to come share your story real quick?
Oh, yeah.
Effectively, first of all, they can still receive retribution because they're still in the system, right?
Yeah.
Secondly, they're not going home to a Sensei Dave or any
Mm.
other kind of trauma informed individual with lived experience or professional backgrounds to be able to support them through what they just went through, let alone to follow up with them in different time periods afterwards. Three, we're still not compensating them. If you just want to put a dollar at it at the bottom line, we're still not paying people enough to do that in general. And
Yeah.
so I think that's where it really becomes inequitable. But you know what? That's a talking point that I'm working on with my national advocacy. So we can talk about that offline a little bit later. Let me get us back on track right now.
I
So
love it. I love it. We're going down a rabbit hole, but I
we
love it.
are,
All right.
interviews is all about rabbit holes, right? Like,
Two
how can you
passionate,
understand without?
two passionate people talking. That's a beautiful thing.
Absolutely. So you've spoken a lot about the need for caring adults to be equipped with the right training to truly support at-risk youth. What specific strategies can child welfare practitioners adopt to ensure their actions are both equitable and impactful? And then I guess I'll add to that, what could lived experts look for in people to know if there are green flags or red flags, for lack of a better words?
Well, so there's a plethora of stuff out there. So, I think I have a degree in psychology, and so there's many great psychologists that have great programs or opinions. There's me that have programs for people that are working with our youth. So there's not a lack of stuff out there. But when we're talking about government, because all of these systems are government run, and I was in the Air Force for 24 years. I understand how government purchases work, how government money works, and it doesn't necessarily go to the best qualified person. Most of the time, it goes to whoever it charges less. And so, getting out of the mindset of, who charges less for this, and it kind of checks the trauma informed box, or whatever we're looking for, it checks the box. It doesn't cost as much as the other. Let's just roll with it. So there needs to be I think, better litmus tests or qualifications to ensure that we're spending the money right in the right places. And because there's not a lack of knowledge, there's not a lack of passionate people. It's just where we put that knowledge and that passion. If it's in the right place, if it's a 80% fit versus 100% fit, but 100% fit is 10 grand more, 20 grand more a year, and then you're not picking the 100. And it makes no sense because everybody wants to wear Gucci. Everybody likes Louis Vuitton.
But they don't like
So
those prices and they end up with the
yeah, but they
those New York street vendors.
like the sneakers that are grand. They're like, oh well, so you go buy the knockoff. Well, the knockoff is $400-500, but guess what? In 6 months, the knockoff is not as good as the real thing. And so, looking at where we put our money, our time, our effort. Again, I'll go back to the lived experience thing. Like people, that whoever sees this needs to be thinking in the forefront of their mind, like, where can I find people that are doing well with lived experience and be knocking on their door constantly? Because it's a very small percentage, extremely small.
It's so
Yeah.
small. I think in one of my other episodes, I was saying of the public speakers, the national public speakers for child welfare events across any sector, right? I feel like there's legitimately less than 50.
Oh
I feel
yeah.
less than
Yeah.
50 that people call on. And when you really think about what there's 400,000 plus people in care every single year, that doesn't include the people who have aged out, right? So that doesn't include all of the current lived experience people in the United States. That's a
Yeah.
significantly small number of people to represent. And not only represent, but carry the burden of representing the child welfare experience on their backs when they're doing this work. And it's just not necessarily the best thing to have such a limited perspective and scope of the work, right? Because not
Hmm.
everyone's going to be those 50 individual lived experiences. Not
Yeah.
everyone can have those perspectives. And one of my speaking points that I do use when I do my advocacy work is who's not at this table right now? Right?
Hmm.
Like, who's not on this podcast? Who's
Mm.
not invited to speak in the places where we're invited to speak because they like the way that we use our words. They know that we're easy to work with. They know that we respond to our emails and we follow up with whatever they ask us to do. But who are those people who don't necessarily satisfy those boxes? Like, are they not as important? Are their lived experience perspectives not going to be included because you can't get them on the phone easily or because they don't know how to email back in a timely manner? Like, we really have
Well,
to ask those difficult questions, you know?
I hear you, but look, I think that it's up to us that we're all so sensitive these days, and we all want to feel like we're like there is nothing at the top, right? And so if there's no top, then there's no bottom and there's no middle. So there's no reason to strive for anything. And that's just not the case. And so the reason why I say that is those of us that are at the top, and I'll say you and I are at the top, need to make sure that we're doing our job to reach to the ones that are in the middle that don't follow up, that don't use their voice in the right way. I'll tell you, I'll share this, and she'll eventually see it. One of my coachees that I mentor, and she's older, she's my age, and I'm 50. She didn't show up to something twice. One podcast that was a national podcast, a big podcast regarding foster care, and then another meeting that she scheduled today. And so after our meeting with the other people that was on, I said, "Hey, let's talk offline real quick." And I always open up with this: "Hey, are you in need of a hug, or can I just be real with you today?" And most people will say, "Well, no, be with me." And I say it again. I said, "No, no, 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 no. I want you to listen to what I'm asking because I'm being serious, and I mean that. Because sometimes if you're not in the right headspace, you need a hug. You don't need somebody to rip into you. You don't need reality. You just need somebody to hold you and say it's going to be all right. But if you don't need that, then Sensei Dave kicks in." And I laid into her and I said, "Look, you've been late or in your car or not with a good cell reception or signal, and the Zoom is cutting in and out, and this and this and this and this, and you want to succeed. I'm sorry, you don't, and you're not showing it. You're not showing up for even yourself, better yet, anyone else." And this is like verbatim what I'm telling her. She follows everything I do, so she's going to eventually see this, but I say it with love. I say it because I know that she needs some of us at the 1%, the point zero something percentile, to just reach up and go, "Hey, you got to check email. Guess what? You have a spam box. Check your spam box, please, because people are emailing you and maybe they need you for this thing or that thing, and you're just missing out. Oh, guess what? You don't want to call people, cold call people. It doesn't matter if you want to. It doesn't. I wish it would. I wish it were that people were knocking our doors down. I really do. I've been turned down for programs that I have for youth involved or justice involved youth for several different states, and then I find out who got the bid or who got awarded the contract, and I'm like, "Okay, I'll still show up. I'm still going to be knocking, but guess what? They should be knocking on my door." And I know that. And if I tell you, "Hey, this program is 100 grand, but guess what? If 1% of the kids that go through this program don't recidivate, you've made your money because we're spending between 100 and 200,000 per child per year. So for you to go, well, we don't really have 100,000 to invest is asinine because your ROI is there with anyone at our percentile. Like Coke has headhunters. Johnson and Johnson they have headhunters. They have people that their job is to find the best talent for whatever program, the best programmers, the best scientists, and they're showing at people's, showing at people's, "Hey, can we talk with Coca-Cola? I know that you work for Pepsi and you've been with them for 25 years, and we don't want any of their secrets, but we know you're a scientist there, and you're one of the best." And so us at I'll say 1 percentile, but it's actually a point something percentile. Yeah, we our calendars should be full
fool. You fool. We should be calling on our peers to fill in for us.
Yeah, really. I can't, hey, guess what? So and so, I really can't do this conference or this thing. I can't do this meeting. And so there's 21,000 kids every year that age out. 21,000. And how many of us? 150? At this, and I don't mean boastfully. I mean, I could sit retired in Greece for the rest of my life and not work. And, it's
I
like,
wish I was retired. Please stop doing
whatever.
like you don't have to brag right now.
Oh, sorry. I'm humble bragging. I'm humble bragging.
No, I hear what you're saying though. Yeah,
It's
like
the truth.
there's not enough of us who are successful and who are healed and who are choosing to be engaged with this work, whether we do it on the side of our professional work or whether it is our mainstream professional work. There just aren't enough of us. And because of that, like you said, we should be engaged and actively pursued by way more organizations on all different kind of levels than we already are. And I think we could talk a long time about that, but I think for me, that's also why we need to recenter the youth in this conversation because, you know,
Mm,
we're in two different generations. There's a whole generation of children and babies who are coming up who are going to be the next lived experts. And how can we help them show up? How can
yeah.
we help them to know when they're safe and they're unsafe, not just in the scope of advocacy work or in their own lived experiences, but just in life in general? And how can we prepare them to be the next system change leaders? Because that's what we really, really need. And I think I'll offer this before we kind of transition to our next question is that we're definitely pioneers. Like, what was that game that we used to play? It was like
Mm.
one of the first computer games, the wagon thing, Oregon Trails. You
Oregon Trail.
and
Yeah,
how you had to
yeah.
get from one point to another. And usually, like most people didn't make it, and you got dysentery along the way, and your wagon lost its wheels, and you had to forge the path. To be honest with you, that's how I think a lot about our advocacy work because we are doing something that hasn't previously been done in this way. And I'm not disregarding the people who came before us, the people who spoke up and said, hey, this group of people exists. This is what they need. This is what's been wrong. This is what can be right because those people exist and we give thanks for them and everything they have done to further the betterment of child welfare system. But in this capacity, in terms of this being our professional work, in terms of traveling nationally and sometimes internationally to do child welfare advocacy, in terms of being on boards and being part of design teams and addressing presidents and all of those different things that we've both done, right?
Mm,
These are new elements of the work.
yeah.
And previous people have not been getting invoices paid. Previous people have not been getting W-9s filled out for the amount of money that they made in this work. Previous people have not had nonprofits established to further their work. Previous people have not had government contracts to do this kind of work, right? And so it's hard for a reason. It's hard because we're the first ones doing it in this way. And so as much as it sucks.
Love it. Love it. Love the perspective. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
Honestly, I hadn't thought
Yeah.
about that. And I love the perspective. I really, that's the truth.
We're
That's the
forging we're forging new paths, and that's always going to be difficult, and it's always going to be tricky, and dysentery might happen along the way. But
Oregon Trail.
how can we enjoy it while it lasts? It's
I
really
love it. For real. It's the truth.
but yeah, so I digress. But anyway, so our next question is the Inspire to Aspire Youth Empowerment Program is rooted in community focused solutions. How do you collaborate with local communities to create sustainable support systems for youth aging out of foster care or exiting the juvenile justice system?
Yeah, so it takes a village. I love the expression. I love the ideology, and it goes back to what we were talking about. We just need more of us. And so, there's some really good programs out there, and so I love partnering up with other nonprofits, and sometimes in totally different spheres. I have someone that we're working on a grant and a partnership, and they're in the space of green energy, right? Green environmental type of stuff. They came to me and said, hey, look, we got a big grant, a few million, and what we want to do is create a program, an offspin of our main program focused towards at-risk youth. And so I say, okay, what's the demographic? 18 to 24. blah blah blah. Okay, this is all youth that this 21,000 youth that are going to be aging out or emancipating from foster care and juvenile justice per year. And so partnering up with pre-existing programs and people, and even now my team, we're reaching out to corporations to bring me to juvenile detention centers and have the impact that we need to have. If the state can't do it or doesn't want to do it, maybe corporations, maybe Coca-Cola says, hey, here's 500,000 this year. We want you to, drink a Coke every time you go into a juvenile detention center, but we also want you to have the impact. So, it's multifaceted, and community can be anything. And as long as it's positive, and probably I use a bad example because I don't think I wouldn't partner with Coke. But
We can tea on that later.
we could probably delete that out. I don't know if they give me 500,000, maybe. No, I wouldn't even consider.
We'll redact that statement, depending on how much you like to pay.
I say Pepsi. I meant to say Pepsi. No.
But you're talking about community, and that's the resounding theme I hear, is that community, the community. But another theme that I'm picking up on is that, like, out of the box thinking, and that, intersectional partnership, really, because who says that there can't be something that benefits foster youth, even though an organization might be centered on green energy or hygiene or community planning or education, even though I think all of these things are deeply interconnected, right? Having the mindset that we can only ever partner with other people who are specifically child welfare oriented, I think, is one of the downfalls of child welfare. And it doesn't service those who are in care. Those who are in care need diverse experiences, and they need access to diverse organizations and people. If we could come up with a list of things that differentiates those who are quote unquote successful from those who are not, and I only say that because, again, what is success and how are we defining it, right? I would argue that the people who are more successful have had a very diverse set of experiences, meaning they've gotten outside of their neighborhoods. They know people who are across multiple demographics, right? They have even the bravery to just try different foods or have been exposed to different foods. You'd be surprised how those little everyday life experiences, when diversified, can build resilience in people who have experienced a severe trauma that child welfare often enacts in people's lives. Community-centered change is really what you're getting to. So that is awesome. And I wish you all the luck. I hope that Pepsi and Coke have a bidding war over who gets who gets to work.
Well, it's funny. I think about, so we have a new program that we're trying to launch, or launching in 2025, called the Cultural Immersion Initiative. So what I want to do is bring our youth to Greece. I want them to come and experience yes, you can. I'm going to need 5 mentors,
I have my passport. I'm ready to go. Okay. I was in Germany earlier this year. Don't tell me with a good time.
Greece is amazing. And, the truth is, travel changes people. Travel changed me, when you start experiencing those things. And so I think the biggest thing is, giving our youth a plethora of experiences and letting the things that resonate with them. Imagine that.
I agree. Travel has changed my life. I have a personal goal of going to a new country every year of my life. And I would like to be able to, on my dying bed, hopefully I die peacefully in my sleep, right? But in the event that I don't, and I have time to think about my death, I would like to have visited every country that there is to visit. I just think there's a wealth of beauty in the world. And when you have the hard experiences of being in child welfare, sometimes life doesn't feel so beautiful. But to be able to get out of the country and have the experiences that come along with that, to literally see the beauty of the world and the earth, there's another caveat to this. I didn't realize how unsafe I felt in America. And when I left, I felt so safe and I felt so free. And I just felt so like, oh my God, like, who is this version of Ivory? Like, I don't know who she is. I'm frolicking in the world. And then when I get back in the US territory, it's like, womp, womp, womp.
Shock. Yeah. I feel you. And I'm a former gang member. I've owned martial arts schools. I've fought all my life. I'm a dangerous person. I'm boastfully saying that. And no stranger to violence, and I go back to the States, and I'm like, dude,
It feels so stressful, doesn't it? Like, we're getting
Ooh.
off track though. We can talk offline.
Yeah, we are. We are. We keep getting up. We could do this, but you said an hour, right? Yeah, right. 3 hours later.
Yeah, wishful thinking.
Sorry.
It's okay. But all right, let's get back on track. So, with recidivism rates alarmingly high among youth and juvenile detention, as you've been saying, how does your program address the systemic barriers that perpetuates this cycle? And what role does fostering intrinsic motivation play in this process? You also kind of touched on that.
Intrinsic motivation is everything. I can't say that enough. Intrinsic motivation. So I want to explain to some that might not know what intrinsic and extrinsic motivation is. So extrinsic motivation is external. You're motivated by money. Everyone's motivated by money. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation is something that internally you're motivated to do or accomplish or to be. And so it's in your heart or your soul or your being. Intrinsic motivation is huge. Informing intrinsic motivation is huge in everyone, people that I coach, adults that I coach, youth that I coach, whatever it is. But the thing is, how do we get there? How do we get from having zero intrinsic motivation? I'll use myself as an example. I was apathetic. And so there's no more dangerous kid than an apathetic kid. And we don't look at the school shooters, right? We don't look at the kids that are running around committing like heinous crimes and go, how apathetic is he or she? And apathetic is just being void of anything, void of hope, void of seeing a future, void of human connection, void. And so when you're apathetic, you have a void in your heart and in your soul. And how do we use extrinsic motivation to foster intrinsic motivation? Do I need to pay you to do something for a year before you can form some sort of intrinsic motivation for that or something akin to that? Maybe. There's nothing wrong with that. I see a lot of people in this space trying to get kids to resonate with something, youth to resonate with something, or to form that intrinsic motivation. And it's like, well, it's not that simple. You don't just wake up and go, oh, yes, I love pottery and I'm going to be a famous potter. No, that's not how it works.
You're really touching on something else. I think that this conversation also deals with the idea of proaction versus reaction, right? And
Mm,
we catch youth and kids in their formative years and we build that intrinsic motivation and not only build it, but model it. And I think that's the caveat for child welfare because we're asking people to raise children in ways they probably don't raise their own children, right?
mm,
Because we like to think of foster youth in this silo of they're this child and they should be treated differently than how we actually treat our kids when we go home and we're done working for the day.
mhm,
So
mhm.
asking people to show up as practitioners in a different way than that they don't show up that way for their own children. So how
Yeah,
can they really possibly show up that way for people in foster care, right? When you're not proactive, when you don't get kids in their formative years, when you don't address the trauma as soon as it happens or relatively close to it happening, then you have to be reactive and work from a place of that extrinsic motivation. And
yeah,
unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, I think it would involve having to pay people to do things for themselves over a period of time so that they understand the importance and magnanimity of what those things can mean for themselves and their lives and their success before they really get hey, I should do this. This should be a
yeah,
way of life. This should be an
yeah.
automatic thing that happens for me because it's good for me and it's healthy and it's helpful. But unfortunately, we don't have that a lot of the time. And again, that's why there's such a small percentage of us who are able to show up and do this work and be trauma informed and be mentors. Well, we can't be everything for everyone either. Let's be real, right? That just really highlighted for me that proaction versus that reaction and the
Mm,
difference and nuance of child welfare practitioners not being able to necessarily serve foster youth to the best of their ability because frankly, they don't know how to serve their own children and families to the best of their
yeah,
ability. And
yeah.
schools not teaching them how to do that. So
No, no, I agree.
but thank you for that. Thank you for the vulnerability and sharing that. And as a former English teacher, a high school teacher, and middle school teacher, coach, I saw a lot of apathetic children, and it's not just those who were impacted by the child welfare system. It is I would say, an epidemic in America, especially in the
It
American
is.
education
It's
system.
scary. It's scary. You know, when I see, I've looked into a few youth's eyes, and I know firsthand how it felt when my, I was a bad kid. You know, my first arrest was for felony armed robbery when I was 11 and a half years old. But then when my mom died when I was 12, almost 13, that's the day that I became apathetic. I hated the world. I hated God. I hated everything. And so, when you have a kid that has nothing, how are you expecting him or her to care about you, or the house, or the walls that he's punching, or the car door that he slams, or I didn't care about anything. Oh, you're damaging the house. So what? I have no light at that end at the end of the tunnel. I have literally no light at the end of the tunnel. I have no hope. I have no aspirations. And so if I take your life, I don't care. If I go into the school and take I don't care. I have nothing. And so I think it's so important for anyone working with youth or people in general, but usually if it's a therapist, they can recognize apathy pretty quickly. But teachers don't necessarily recognize it quickly. Foster parents, people that are working at detention centers, they don't typically recognize the eyes of some youth that is apathetic, that has no hope. And there's just not an apathetic person. There's nothing more dangerous than that person. There's just nothing.
You are so right. And there's a few students who have seen that look in their eyes, and I felt hopeless and helpless as a teacher because I did not know within the realms of like what I could realistically do in my daily life and time with them to help them get past that. And those are very real life experiences that a lot of kids are dealing with and don't have supports, whether it be child welfare engaged or not. There's one student who I'll never forget though. And it's not just apathy. I feel like I looked into this child's soul and it was just like completely dead, like irreversibly so. And
Mm,
it's still it pains my heart to this day because I can see the child's face, I can see his eyes, and I know there was nothing that he was living for. And I
yeah.
don't know if he's still alive. I don't know what he's done. I knew him when he was an eighth grader out west. I knew that his life trajectory probably was going to be riddled with adversity and difficulties. But that is the only child I've ever met in my entire life who I looked in his eyes and I didn't think that there was anything left in there. And
Mm,
that feeling is such a disparaging feeling.
it is.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for being real and for contextualizing that for people who might be current foster parents, or maybe their foster brother or foster sister is exhibiting those behaviors and they're trying to understand it. But just know that it comes from a deep place of hurt and trauma
Mhm.
and
Mm.
mourning. And for most people, it can be healed, it can be addressed, it can be supported, right? For most people.
I agree. And let me add to that. I think that the two things that youth that feel apathetic need, not think, I know, not just because I've been there, but I've been in this space and I've had hundreds, unfortunately, of youth that I've seen in different programs of mine that were apathetic, and they had every reason to be. So, before I give you the two things, the one thing that unfortunately we do is not acknowledge the fact that they have reason to be apathetic. Telling a kid, a youth, anyone, oh, just wake up and be grateful, meditate. You're grateful. You should be. Just breathing is, I'm sorry, bullshit. It's just, it doesn't work for some. It might work for someone that is not apathetic, right? That feels like, oh, there's some sort of hope. Okay, let me learn how to meditate. let me
You
let me
can't
be
put a
great.
teaspoon on a fire and stop it. That's just not,
No,
that's not how
no,
nature works.
you can't do, you cannot. So that's the thing that to not do is is try to get them to be grateful for what they have. That doesn't work, and please don't do it. But the two things that do work is, one, listen to him and pull, or her, just have a conversation. It's an adult conversation with a 12-year-old. And I know that a lot of people that are working with our youth in this space don't understand how to have an adult conversation with a child, because you're seeing a child in front of you. This child has probably lived more lifetimes than you have. It's just facts. And
It's
so
true.
have an adult conversation with him or her and say, let me hear you. Let me acknowledge what you're saying. Let me understand what you're saying. Stop thinking you know, because thank God, luckily, everyone hasn't been through what we've been through. That's a good thing. But
That's
you
a
also can
beautiful thing.
empathize.
That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, yeah, we don't want this. No one that's healed in this space is thinking everyone should go through. No, no one.
No, we don't want that.
No.
We need allies who don't have this lived experience, who don't have this
Yeah,
trauma, who can never
yeah.
relate. That we want as many of those people as possible.
Oh gosh, yeah. And so that's the second thing, besides like just hear that young person, hear, acknowledge, listen, pull it out maybe. But the other thing is give them hope. And it's going to be hard. That's the hardest part, is the hope part, because a lot of times they'll want to talk, but they still feel like, well, nothing matters. I would leave group homes or foster homes or run away from detention because I knew what was going to happen, and I just go back to detention. What's worse than worse? Nothing. So who cares? If I punch a hole in your wall and you don't want me at your foster home, guess what? I just go to another one. Big deal. I've been to dozens. What's another one? It doesn't matter. But when you sit and you say, are you interested in guitar? Are you interested? And then you go and do something with that information. Where can I find guitar lessons? Where can I find piano lessons? Where can I find martial arts lessons? How can I give this person something to live for?
And I guarantee you it's going to cost less than what is it, $100,000 a head you said each year when you
Between 100 and 200,000 per kid per year, depending
piano
on the.
lessons, piano
Yeah,
lessons, swim lessons, guitar lessons, Spanish lessons are all going to cost. You can
yes,
do all of those actually, and they'll all cost significantly less than letting a child go through the juvenile justice system. I just want y'all to remember that and resonate with
yeah.
that. When y'all hear me talking about non-traditional approaches to supporting youth and then them having success, it involves finding out what they're interested in, building relationships, like Sensei Dave said, and acting on that information, not just passively absorbing it, but acting on it. If a child tells you they like fashion, get them sewing lessons. If a child tells you that they want to learn their native tongue, get them language lessons. It's really not that difficult. It's not that difficult. And we have to have enough stability within the child welfare system to be able to build relationships with kids so that they're not being passed through 800 different practitioners for this. You got to restart relationship building every time you get a new therapist, every time you go to a new group home, every time you go to a new foster home. And that's just one part of the process. There's so many other things that you have to keep restarting. We only have about two more questions, and then I have to ask you
Okay.
the questions that I ask every one who has lived experience. So you're not going to be able to escape that today. But as someone who has personally navigated foster care, juvenile justice, and the challenges of systemic inequities, how do you integrate your lived experience into your work to inspire change in the systems, communities you engage with?
In every way possible. And so the first thing I realize is everyone is not Dave. Imagine that. So my lived experience is not the same and may not even be akin to the next person's lived experience. Kinship care is very different than juvenile detention, and that's okay. And one's not worse or better than the other. It just is. And so I'm not here showing up to try to draw a graph between what's better and what's worse. It just is. And so I try to pull from my personal experience, but I also pull from the youth and the adults' personal experiences that I've mentored or encountered or whatever throughout my 25, 30 years in this field. And so trying to pull from everywhere you can, not just your own lived experience, others' lived experiences, and then just the real world. It is beautiful and can be beneficial, but understanding that every youth that you're working with has his or her own experience right now. And so how you show up for that person matters.
The resounding message I hear in that is we are so much more than our lived experiences, and
Mm.
giving ourselves the grace to be that, to be the holistic parts of us is really, really how we do that. And that is so impactful for those who are coming behind us because they need to see us as more than just national child welfare advocates, right? We're people who, love music. We're people who are trained in martial arts. We're people who have had these different life experiences outside of the child welfare system. And all of those come together to make us who we are. So thank you for that. So, your program aims to equip youth with tangible skills like anger management, resiliency, and goal setting. How do you measure the impact of these skills on their long-term well-being and success?
Well, it's hard to measure something long term because I got to define long term. So long term could be 1 year, long term could be a lifetime. And so for me, long term is a lifetime. And so when you equip someone with the skills that are proven that will last a lifetime and show them how to use those skills. And those skills don't expire. There's no expiration date. So, for example, I teach youth how to meditate. That doesn't resonate with everyone, but certainly I get them to try and not just in vain, like really try and really clear their mind and really sit in silence and really learn how to clear your mind and to lower your heart rate and to breathe, and so deep breathing and all of this. Those skills are lifetime skills. And I think that if I teach someone how to fish instead of just giving them fish, they'll always be able to eat. And so that's what I aim to do with the program and everyone that I encounter, young and old, is to give them those tangible things that do work and not just give it to them, but teach them how to use it, teach them when to use it, teach them how to modify that. So maybe you're in a space, I'll go back to the meditation. Maybe a lot of us have anger management, and I call it emotional control. So it's not just maybe you have sad management and you're always sad, or anxiety, you're always anxious. So it's anxiety management. We all get anxious. It's just when, I sleep really well, but I also am calm. So when I lay down, I don't think about the next day. But there was a period of time where I was, I started speaking, I started getting a lot of speaking engagements, all of this, and I had all of these ideas, and they would always come to me as I lay down at night. And so I'm up at 2 o'clock in the morning thinking about ideas and stuff like that. And I'm like, gosh, and that kept happening. And I go, okay, this has to stop because it's interrupting my sleep. And unfortunately, we can't compartmentalize certain things. And sleep is one of those things you just can't compartmentalize. So if you have a lack of sleep, you're going to have a lack of a lot of other stuff. And so what I said is, I have to find a way to not do this. Oh, I write it down. And so now, and this was back when, we didn't have cell phones so readily handy. But, now I grab my phone and I send myself an email and I go, that's my video idea. I'm done. And now I've gotten it out of my system. And now I don't have to think about it. There's nothing for me to think about because I used to think about the video idea and then what that looks like, and then visualize me on stage presenting that video idea. And so all of this stuff, and it's all beautiful stuff. It's stuff that we want to do, but just not at 12:30 at night. Right. And
Yes, I know.
instead of a half an hour thing, it becomes a 15-second thing. Oh, that's a good idea. I get to work on that tomorrow. Email done. Put my phone up. If I teach that to a youth, guess what? Now they get to sleep better. Now they learn how to control their anxiety. Now they learn so many things just from that one task. You learn so many things about yourself and how to navigate the world in a good way.
The beautiful caveat is even if they don't put it into immediate practice, at least they had the exposure to it. At
Mhm.
least they know that it exists as an option. At least they know how to do it for one day when they find themselves really tired and really at their wits' end. They're like, oh, wait, I remember that thing that Dave told me about.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what they do with that immediately. It's almost like I tell myself this all the time. When I give people gifts, I have to really give them the gift and let go of what they do with it. So even if I give them the gift and they rip it up and explode it and set it on fire, that's not my responsibility because I gave that to them and they're to do with it whatever they want to do with it, right? So
Mhm.
I think that's how also modeling these actions and teaching other people, specifically those with lived experience, how to deal with the thing called life. We just have to be able to give them the gifts of knowledge that we have and step away and let them do with it what they will. And they could set it on fire immediately. A lot of times they will, right? Because they're cold and they need to be warm. But that doesn't mean that one day they won't come back to it. So thank
Yeah.
you so much. I have to end with our questions that I ask all of our lived experiences. Ask me who is R. I don't know because it's just me here at InnerViews. But what changes do you hope to see in the child welfare system in your lifetime?
There's so many. I think the biggest thing, and we talked about this, is we need people knocking on our doors. We need more lived experience. And I'm talking the pinnacle of success that has survived the ordeal of going through foster care or juvenile detention or kinship care, and they're doing great, should be seeking to be on stage, to have programs implemented, to engage with people that are running different programs on the state or federal level. We should not. I shouldn't have my assistant calling people all the time. I should be sought after. You should be sought after. And I think by ensuring that happens in our lifetimes, hopefully, that when it does, it will have such a profound impact on so many levels that we'll start to see real change within the system. Because you've heard this, and everyone that's listened to this podcast that has ever been involved with juvenile justice or foster care has heard this cliche now: the system is broken. Well, I don't know, it's been 20, 30 years and the system is broken. And we're throwing more money at the system in the wrong places. And we have the wrong people making the wrong decisions, but I don't think in a bad way. I think that they're just making the best decision a lot of times they think is right or they have the ability to comprehend. And it's just not working. And we know it. So if more money at the same thing isn't working, if trauma informed care isn't working, if changing your pronouns isn't working, if whatever the heck it is isn't working, then you got to go back to the drawing board because Coke is $1 billion company, Johnson and Johnson is $1 billion, Nike is $1 billion company because it's a business. And so if we start looking at the child welfare system as a business, a true business, and the profit is successful people that come out of the system. That's our profit. That's our profit margin. When we start looking at, okay, and then define success. What is success? So to Coca-Cola, success is, hey, if we can sell, so Mexico is the largest buyer of Coke. If we can sell billions of Coke, bottles actually in Mexico. So they don't sell the cans as much as they do the bottles. Well, guess what? We don't ship cans to Mexico. We ship bottles. That's what sells. And so if we start looking at the child welfare system as a business and the profit is successful youth, and we define what success is in the right way, because graduating high school is not success. That just is. Our kids didn't have an option. It was my son and daughter that didn't even cross their minds. Do I graduate or not? That crossed my mind, but not theirs. And so not giving them the option of such a low bar for success. Yeah, you got a free degree. The state will pay for your degree. That's 40,000 a year. Let's take advantage of that.
Let's leverage that because listen, mine wasn't free. here. Like, okay, but I fought for
I
those.
wasn't free. And 20 years later, I'm still paying them student loans.
No,
I know, right?
but yeah,
We could really look at it differently and get more people that have lived experience
yeah, prioritize that.
want to show up, not showing up as a part-time job, but showing up to give, because there's no one that has more of a heart than a healed person that has come from our system. We
Absolutely.
want nothing. You sit 10 of us in a room and all of us will say, 100 of us will say, no, the bar for success is not graduating high school. I'm sorry. No, that was not my bar. That was not the bar for my kid. That's not the bar for anyone that will ever want to be successful. So
Yeah.
we have the heart, we have the knowledge, we have the skill set. And I'm talking about, the ones in the middle. Some of them, it's our job to lift those of us that are struggling, as I did today with someone that's, 40 something years old. But there are some of us that are at the 0.01 percentile that we should be headhunted.
Absolutely. I agree with you. So if you want to reach out to me or Dave, information will be in the show notes. And we have a lot of other people we can bring to the table as well. You got
Yeah, we
to touch
do.
on
We
this
do.
question, but I'll ask it just for the sake of asking it. So if you had one piece of advice for people with lived experience in general, what would that be?
Oh, I think it would be two things. It would be two pieces of advice. Just heal. There's so many tools, so many people, so many ways, so much, but it takes action. And so a lot of us want to heal from the couch as we binge watch episode upon episode of Breaking Bad. I'm sorry, you're not healing there. So many people want a husband or a wife as they sit in the house all day. And I'm like, it's not happening. And you're not going to pray into it existence. You're not going to manifest it into existence. I'm sorry. I would love it to be like that. It's not. And anyone that has anything in life has told you, like, the secret, manifestation. No, you got to visualize, you got to want, you got to dream, blah, blah, blah. But you're not going to want, dream, and visualize from your couch, breaking episode number 200 on, and all of a sudden you're married and happy or so, whatever it is.
You're
So
coming in hot. Oh my goodness.
people gonna hate me. That's all right. You can hate me all you want.
Listen, it's real. You got to put the action in, So you got to get up and do something. What is it, Nike?
Just do it.
Just do it. And I think one of the biggest lessons I've been learning in the last several years of my own life is like sometimes you just have to fail forward and you have to just charge ahead without a clear plan. A lot of this is going to be learning as you go because I didn't have a lot of people who told me what to expect, what 30 looks like, or how to prepare for the things that 30 holds. Like, I'm figuring that stuff out as we go.
Yeah.
I either sit down or I can keep trying to go forward and just learn as I go along the way and take notes for reflection. And also, that's where that mentorship comes in, knowing that there are people in my life who have certain experiences that I could talk to them about. Hey, what did you do when you were buying your house? Or, hey, like, how do I progress at this point in my career? Or do you think that I should go back to school? Or is this loan idea is that the best option for me? And so just, leveraging the resources that you have and take action, So thank you for that. And last but not least, the people want to know, Sensei Dave, who are you without the trauma of child welfare?
I don't want to ever contemplate that. I will never change that. If I had umpteen thousand million times to change that, I wouldn't change a single solitary thing that I went through. And so here's why. I've been able to give so much to so many because of what I've endured. And I think it would be actually evil to jump into a time machine, to not have to go through all of that because of all the good that has come from me going through that. And I'm not saying that to be boastful, and I'm not saying that that is the right thing for you, whoever's listening to this. That's not at all what I'm saying. I am saying that it's a beautiful thing if it ends up being right for you.
That is
Ian.
beautiful reflection. And that really is just indicative of you being an empowered person who turned your pain into purpose. I think only
Yeah.
someone who has turned pain into purpose could respond in that way. So thank you for that response. That's the first time I heard anything like that. So look at you starting to show off with a bang. I don't know what these next few guests are going to bring to the table, honey, but it better be hot because you can't leave me open.
You're so funny.
And one more thing, I have to tell you now, we're cousins now. Everyone who was in the child welfare system is my cousin. So
Whoop. Yep,
we
yep,
cousins.
yep.
But on a real note, thank you so much. I truly,
My
truly
pleasure.
appreciate you, Dave, for the work that you do, for your vulnerability, for your willingness to share it with the people and just share it with InnerViews because that's why we exist. We want to help people share their stories in hopes of inspiring others to change, whether it be how they live their life or how they practice child welfare stuff. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate you.
My
Thank you.
absolute pleasure.
Yeah. Okay. Y'all come back now for our next episode. All right. The InnerViews podcast is a production of the Safe Camp Audio Network, which is a division of Youth Voices Rising via Fostering Media Connections. Please visit safecampaudio.org on the web or Safe Camp Audio on all major social media. This podcast was produced and mixed by Christine Onjoko. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love it if you consider sharing, subscribing, and or giving us a 5-star rating on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you download your podcast.